It is absolutely necessary for me to have persons that can think for me, as well as execute orders. Of all the animosities which have existed among mankind, those which are caused by a difference of sentiments in religion appear to be the most inveterate and distressing, and ought most to be deprecated. George Washington. The propitious smiles of heaven can never be expected on a nation that disregards the eternal rules of order and right, which heaven itself has ordained. George Washington. Mankind, when left to themselves, are unfit for their own government. George Washington. Laws made by common consent must not be trampled on by individuals. George Washington. I hope I shall possess firmness and virtue enough to maintain what I consider the most enviable of all titles, the character of an honest man. George Washington. A slender acquaintance with the world must convince every man that actions, not words, are the true criterion of the attachment of friends. George Washington. Guard against the impostures of pretended patriotism. George Washington. There can be no greater error than to expect, or calculate, upon real favors from nation to nation. It is an illusion which experience must cure, which a just pride ought to discard. George Washington. A man's intentions should be allowed in some respects to plead for his actions. George Washington. Every post is honorable in which a man can serve his country. George Washington. I beg you be persuaded that no one would be more zealous than myself to establish effectual barriers against the horrors of spiritual tyranny, and every species of religious persecution. George Washington. Associate yourself with men of good quality, if you esteem your own reputation, for 'tis better to be alone than in bad company. George Washington. It should be the highest ambition of every American to extend his views beyond himself, and to bear in mind that his conduct will not only affect himself, his country, and his immediate posterity, but that its influence may be coextensive with the world, and stamp political happiness or misery on ages yet unborn. George Washington. The great rule of conduct for us, in regard to foreign nations, is, in extending our commercial relations, to have with them as little political connection as possible. George Washington. War, an act of violence whose object is to constrain the enemy, to accomplish our will. George Washington.